November 1943. The European Air War had reached a critical point. The United States had committed to a strategic bombing campaign against Germany. The campaign was called Operation Point Blank. The goal was to destroy German industrial capacity, German aircraft production, and Germany's ability to wage war from the air. The B-17 Flying Fortress was the primary American heavy bomber. It was revolutionary. The B-17 could fly at altitude above 30,000 feet. It could carry 8,000 pounds of bombs. It had defensive armament never seen before. The B-17 had 13.50 caliber machine guns. It had a crew of 10 men. It was the most heavily armed bomber in the world. But the B-17 was not invulnerable. German fighters attacked bomber formations continuously. German fighters shot down B-17s regularly. They killed American crews. They damaged bombers severely. The air war over Germany was brutal and unforgiving. Tail gunners were the most vulnerable crew members. They sat alone in the tail turret, exposed to enemy fighters. They had the best view of fighter attacks from behind. They had to defend the bomber from attacks that the pilot could not see. Tail gunners often saw the enemy first. Tail gunners often fought the enemy longest. Tail gunners had casualty rates exceeding 50%. Robert Croft was 17 years old. He had enlisted in the Army Air Forces by lying about his age on the enlistment papers. He wanted to fight in the war. He wanted to serve his country. He had left high school to enlist. Croft came from rural America. He had grown up around firearms. He had hunted since childhood. He understood ballistics. He understood target acquisition. Croft's childhood hunting experience prepared him for combat in ways that military training alone could not. His basic training was rigorous. Croft learned gunnery at specialized schools. He learned how to operate .50 caliber machine guns. He learned how to maintain the weapons. He learned how to clear jams. He learned how to estimate deflection angles. He learned how to lead moving targets. Croft learned more in weeks than most soldiers learn in months. Croft's instructors recognized his talent immediately. His gunnery scores were exceptional. His ability to track moving targets was extraordinary. His understanding of ballistics was advanced. His instructors recommended him for combat assignments. Croft was posted to a B-17 bomber crew. November 24, 1943. 458 B-17s launched from English bases. The target was Misburg, Germany. The target was a synthetic rubber factory. The factory produced rubber for German tires and military equipment. The factory was critical to German war production. Croft's bomber was named Ye Old End. The pilot was Captain James Hartwell. Hartwell was experienced. He had flown multiple combat missions. He knew the dangers ahead. He knew that German fighters would attack. He knew that his crew's survival depended on defensive skills. The flight to the target took hours. Hours over the English Channel. Hours over the North Sea. Hours over German airspace. The formation flew tighter as they entered danger zones. The formation's defensive firepower increased with proximity. The gunners were vigilant. The gunners scanned the sky constantly. Croft sat in the tail turret. His hands rested on the gun controls. His eyes scanned the rear hemisphere. He was ready. He had trained for this moment. He did not know if he would survive. He knew he had to try. The German fighters appeared first as specks. The specks grew larger. The specks resolved into shapes. The shapes became identifiable. Messerschmitt Bf-109s. Focke-Wulf FW-190s. Dozens of fighters. Maybe 50. Maybe more. The exact number was impossible to determine during combat. German fighter pilots had spent years fighting. They had accumulated hundreds of combat hours. They had shot down hundreds of Allied aircraft. They were experienced. They were trained. They attacked with precision and coordination. But something was different on this day. The B-17 formation had an exceptional tail gunner. Robert Croft opened fire first. His twin .50 caliber machine guns spoke with a voice of 800 rounds per minute. The guns roared. The brass casings fell. The bullets flew toward the German fighters. A Messerschmitt Bf-109 appeared in Croft's gun sight. Croft tracked the fighter smoothly. His hands were steady. His aim was precise. The fighter filled the gun sight. Croft squeezed the trigger. The bullets found their target. The Bf-109 broke away smoking. The fighter fell away from the formation. But there were more. Wave after wave. The German fighters attacked from multiple angles. They attacked from multiple altitudes. They attacked with coordination. They attacked continuously. The bomber formation was under constant assault. Hour after hour, the battle continued. Croft kept fighting. Croft kept tracking. Croft kept firing. His ammunition supply decreased steadily. He rationed fire. He waited for the perfect shot. He made every round count. One engagement was particularly fierce. A German FW-190 pilot decided to make a head-on attack. Head-on attacks were dangerous. They placed the fighter and bomber nose to nose. The closing speed was tremendous. The time in the engagement window was brief. The opportunity for decisive fire was limited. The FW-190 closed the distance rapidly. It was visible to nose turret and top turret gunners. But Croft had the best shot. He was tracking the fighter as it approached. His gun sight was steady. His fingers were ready. The moment came. The FW-190 was in range. The FW-190 was visible. The FW-190 was vulnerable. Croft's fingers tightened on the trigger. His twin machine guns opened fire. Rounds walked across the cockpit. The German fighter's windscreen shattered. The cockpit was filled with debris and fragments. The pilot jerked backward from the impact. The FW-190 veered away from the formation. The fighter dove. The fighter fell. The fighter trailed smoke. The German pilot had lost control. The aircraft fell away from the bomber formation. Throughout the engagement, Croft kept fighting. Other German fighters attacked. Croft responded. Croft tracked. Croft fired. A Bf-109 made an aggressive pass. Croft's bullets caught the engine. The Bf-109 began to smoke. The fighter broke off the attack. The fighter fell away damaged. Another FW-190 attacked from a different angle. Croft swung his guns. He led the target. He calculated the deflection. He fired. The bullets connected. The FW-190 suffered damage. The fighter retreated. The fighter sought safety. The fighter did not return. Ammunition supplies were running critically low. Croft knew that his ammunition was almost depleted. He knew that once ammunition ran out, the bomber would be defenseless from rear attacks. But Croft kept firing. Croft kept defending. Croft kept fighting. He used ammunition carefully. He took only shots he was certain would connect. The other gunners on Ye Old End also fought hard. The top turret gunner engaged fighters attacking from above. The nose gunner engaged fighters attacking from a front. The waist gunners engaged fighters from the sides. The ball turret gunner engaged fighters from below. Every position on the bomber was under fire. Every gunner had targets. Every gunner was fighting for survival. But Croft's defensive fire was exceptional. His kill count was higher than other gunners. His accuracy was more precise. His discipline was more complete. Other crew members noted Croft's remarkable performance. The pilot noted the defensive fire coming from the tail. The pilot recognized that the tail gunner was exceptional. German pilots reported back to their bases. They described the engagement. They described the defensive fire. They described the tail gunner's accuracy. They reported that one bomber was defended with exceptional skill. They reported that the bomber's tail gun defenses were devastating. German intelligence officers debriefed the pilots. They asked about the bomber. They asked about the defensive fire. They asked about casualties. German pilots reported that they had never encountered defensive fire this effective. They reported that the tail turret was devastatingly accurate. They reported that the tail gunner was the most dangerous position on the bomber. One German pilot, a veteran of 40 combat missions, told intelligence officers that he had never been shot at with such precision. He said the gunner was young, very young, but his skills were those of a veteran. The intelligence officer made a note. The note was filed. The note became part of the record. The engagement lasted nearly an hour. For 60 minutes, the bomber formation was under attack. For 60 minutes, Croft defended the rear. For 60 minutes, his guns roared. For 60 minutes, he tracked targets. For 60 minutes, he made decisions about ammunition expenditure. For 60 minutes, he kept the bomber alive. Finally, the German fighters broke off. The fighters were running low on fuel. The fighters were running low on ammunition. The fighters had suffered casualties. The fighters withdrew. The engagement ended. The bomber formation continued toward the target. The cost of the engagement was severe. Several bombers in the formation had been shot down. Several bombers had been heavily damaged. Several bombers had crew casualties. But many bombers survived. Many bombers completed the mission. The formation reached the target area. The bombardier in the nose of Ye Old Inn began his bomb run. He aligned the sights on the target. He tracked the target. He waited for the precise moment. The moment came. The bombs were released. 8 1,000-pound bombs fell toward the factory below. The bombs impacted the target. Explosions erupted. The factory was damaged. The factory caught fire. The factory's production capacity was reduced. The mission was successful. The bombing run was complete. Now the long flight home began. The return flight took hours. The return flight went through German airspace. The return flight was still in danger. German fighters could still attack. German fighters still had ammunition. But the German fighters had been bloodied. German fighters had learned respect for Ye Old Inn and her tail gunner. Croft remained vigilant throughout the return flight. He kept his eyes on the sky. He kept his hands on the gun controls. He remained ready. But the German fighters maintained their distance. The German fighters did not attack again. The German fighters had learned their lesson. The bomber eventually crossed the coast of England. The bomber was over friendly territory. The danger had passed. The mission was complete. The bomber descended toward the landing field. The landing gear was lowered. The landing was successful. Ye Old Inn touched down on the runway. The bomber slowed. The bomber came to a stop. The engines shut down. The crew climbed out of the bomber. The flight was complete. The crew was alive. The bomber had survived. Croft climbed down from the tail turret. His fingers were sore from gripping the gun controls. His ears were ringing from the noise. His eyes were tired from scanning the sky. His mind was still alert. His body was still tense. Combat had ended, but its effects remained. The commanding officer debriefed the crew. The pilot reported about the engagement. The pilot reported about the defensive fire. The pilot reported about Croft. The pilot said the tail gunner had fought with exceptional skill. The pilot said the tail gunner had saved the bomber. The pilot said the tail gunner had been the key to survival. Intelligence officers interviewed Croft. They asked him questions. How many aircraft did you engage? How many did you damage? How many did you destroy? Croft answered honestly. He said he believed he had damaged at least 3 fighters. He said some estimates might be higher. He said it was difficult to determine with certainty. Military intelligence officers later analyzed the engagement. They studied all reports. They calculated the number of German fighters engaged. They calculated the number of German fighters damaged. They calculated the number of German fighters destroyed. Intelligence officers estimated that Croft had damaged or destroyed between 3 and 5 German fighters. For a 17-year-old tail gunner on his first combat mission, the achievement was extraordinary. The Air Force did not award Croft a medal for a single mission. But the story of Robert Croft spread through the Bomber Command. The story spread rapidly. Other crews heard it. Other tail gunners heard it. After this initial mission, Croft flew other combat missions. Mission after mission. Engagement after engagement. Some missions were quiet. Some missions were filled with combat. Croft grew more experienced. Croft became a veteran gunner. On subsequent missions, Croft's defensive records were similarly impressive. On one mission, Croft damaged 3 German fighters in a single engagement. On another mission, Croft drove off a coordinated attack by 6 fighters. On yet another mission, Croft achieved 1 confirmed kill when a fighter crashed and burned. The German Luftwaffe began to recognize the threat posed by Ye Old Inn. German fighter pilots began to request intelligence on the bomber. German pilots wanted to know about the defensive capabilities. German pilots wanted to know about the tail gunner. German intelligence files contained detailed information about the bomber and its defensive systems. German military intelligence conducted a detailed analysis of American bomber defensive capabilities. The analysis noted the effectiveness of tail gun defenses. The analysis noted that the B-17's tail turret was one of the most dangerous positions for attacking fighters. The analysis noted that skilled tail gunners could defeat fighter attacks. The analysis identified Ye Old Inn as a particular threat. The analysis noted the bomber's defensive record. The analysis noted the number of engagements. The analysis noted the number of German fighters damaged or destroyed. The analysis concluded that the bomber had exceptional defensive capabilities. German commanders considered tactical responses. German commanders considered developing new attack tactics. German commanders considered coordinating attacks differently. German commanders wanted to counter the threat posed by bombers like ye old end. The war lasted longer than anyone expected. Croft flew combat mission after combat mission. Croft completed his required tour of duty. Croft had flown more than 20 combat missions. Croft had been in engagements with German fighters on at least 15 missions. Croft had damage and destruction credits that made him one of the most successful tail gunners in his group. When Croft completed his tour of duty, he was rotated back to the United States. He was promoted. He was recognized by his command. He was acknowledged as an exceptional tail gunner. He had survived when many had not. He had excelled when many had merely survived. After the war, Croft continued in the military for several years. Eventually, he left the service. He returned to civilian life. He worked as a machinist. He married and had a family. He lived a quiet life in America. But he never forgot the engagements. He never forgot the combat. He never forgot the 17-year-old who had fought German fighters. Military historians studying the air war over Europe recognized the importance of tail gunners. Historians recognized that tail gunner performance significantly affected bomber survival rates. Historians recognized that skilled tail gunners like Croft made the difference between life and death. German military historians, after the war, also studied the engagement records. They tried to understand why their fighter pilots had struggled against particular bombers. They concluded that American tail gunners had been exceptionally skilled. They concluded that German pilots had faced formidable opponents. The story of Robert Croft represents one of thousands of similar stories from World War II. Stories of young Americans who displayed exceptional skill in combat. Stories of teenagers who performed at veteran levels. Stories of individuals whose courage and competence made differences in specific moments that collectively added up to winning the war. German pilots feared the B-17 with a 17-year-old tail gunner because they had learned respect through combat experience. They had learned that this particular bomber and this particular gunner represented a threat they could not ignore. They had learned that conventional attack tactics did not work against this defensive setup. The kill count was indeed impossible by conventional standards. No one expected a 17-year-old to achieve such results. No one expected someone so young to demonstrate such skill. No one expected someone with so little experience to fight so effectively against veteran German pilots. But Robert Croft proved that age and experience were not the only predictors of combat performance. Croft proved that training, motivation, and natural ability could overcome any disadvantage. Croft proved that one motivated, well-trained young American could make a significant difference in specific combat moments. Croft proved that the B-17's defensive systems, properly manned by skilled gunners, were formidable weapons indeed.